This is the week 2 vlog coming to you from outside in the beautiful Sweden summer weather that is finally upon us. This past week in Sweden has been crazy busy between starting classes and doing more and more tours and planning upcoming trips, but it's been awesome. In 370, we really dove into diversity in cultures and cultural competence and multiculturalism and understanding each term in its own sense, but also how they work together. I like the point that was brought up that you do not need to be well-traveled in order to be culturally competent. And some of the people who are the most well-traveled are not culturally competent. Culture is around us at all times, and we experience culture in many different ways. You can experience Mexican culture by going to an authentic Mexican restaurant. And this term cultural competence doesn't necessarily mean it has to be abroad or in a different country from the US. You can be culturally competent just by knowing your next door neighbors and knowing their traditions, or knowing the kids in your school who dress a little differently than you or have different beliefs than you do. There are different cultures within the US, and I think in order for us to grow as a society, we need to be able to become culturally competent, and so we can accept each other better. One connection I made was when we went to the Living History Forum and learned a little bit more about Anne Frank. None of us were there when the Holocaust happened, and none of us were able to experience it firsthand. But that doesn't mean that we don't understand what happened and that we don't have a good picture of the effect that it had on those in that time period. And that right there is an example of cultural competence, is us being able to understand what happened, the context it happened in, and the impact it had on the society at the time. It's also really important for us to study many different cultures and learn about many different people and how they came to be, because all of those people have what shaped us and what shaped our nation. Even though we all consider ourselves to be Americans, ask any American what your heritage is, and they're going to rattle off 1/4 this and 1/4 that and 50% this, because we all know, and most of the time we're very proud of where we came from. And understanding where we came from is the building blocks to understanding who we are as a country. And that right now is a big debate with the Syrian refugee crisis, is that our country was founded by those fleeing religious persecution and wanting to better life for them and their families. And so are we allowed to sit here and say to people who are now trying to flee religious persecutions, living in a war zone, that they can't come to our country and they can't get asylum? The Syrian refugee crisis is also an example of a single story. And so many people in the US right now have this idea of the Syrian refugee, and they think that they're working for ISIS and that they're bad people and they're terrorists and they're going to bring our country down, when in reality that might not be true. And I think a good point to take away from this is that not going abroad and not traveling isn't an excuse for you to not be culturally competent. There are many, many ways that one can become culturally competent within their own home. In the context of leadership, this is very, very important, because in order to be an effective leader, you need to understand who you're working with and where they're coming from, and why some people have different beliefs and different upbringings. We've all seen different countries, we've grown up in different cities, we've gone to different types of schools, we've done different activities, and these unique experiences are what shape us as a person and allow us to be unique. If as a leader you can only relate to people who are just like you, then I'm not going to be able to appeal to a lot of people, because there are not that many people just like me. We're all unique, and we need to be able to be culturally competent in order to accept others. That's all for this week's vlog. I'll see you next week.